the charter we were meant to log. Superyachts pretend to be about water, but they're really about territory. Who owns it, who borrows it, who has to smile while both of those things happen? I'm Alex, 35, chief officer on the Seraphim, a 62-meter with teak you could eat off and a helidic that's seen more proposals than a parliament. My job is to make sure the ocean never wins in public. I run watches, teach billionaires, nephews the difference between port and left, and keep the crew from believing the guests' lives are contagious. We lifted anchor off Antibes at dawn with a charter manifest that read like a guest list for a wedding with too much money and too few vows. The principal was Gabriel Laurent, renewables mogul, smiles like blade light. His wife, Leela, was the sort of woman who could make linen a plot twist. He'd brought a team that included 3 founders, a political strategist, and a woman listed as consultant named Mara Vale. I knew the moment she stepped barefoot onto the passerelle that the week would require a tighter grip on the rules than most storms. Before lines were even stowed, our purser, Dan, appeared beside me with a tablet and a pane behind his eyes. "The client wants the midnight slow zone disabled," he said. "The midnight slow zone keeps our AIS honest and the Guardia di Finanza bored," I said. "Tell the client we love compliance." Dan rubbed a thumb against his pulse. "Client says they'll be swimming after hours. We should be flexible." "The ocean doesn't negotiate," I said. "Neither does port state control." I radioed the bridge and left the slow zone settings alone. That's Rule 1 at sea. Ignore any request that starts with a smile and ends with an invoice. Mara came to the bridge an hour later wearing sunglasses the color of rude water. "Captain?" she asked, and when I told her the captain was off watch, she smiled at me as if I'd promoted myself. "I'm organizing an impromptu salon tonight. Guests only. We'll need the observation lounge secured." "Secured how?" I asked. "As in, no crew unless summoned," she said, tone light meaning not. "Also, the starboard wing door tends to creak. Oil it." "It creaks to let people know there's a world," I said, "but I'll see what I can do." She leaned against the chart table like she wanted to be friends with hydrodynamics. "You're a careful man, Alex." "I like my paperwork to survive scrutiny," I said. "Everyone does. Not everyone expects to succeed." She tapped the edge of a laminated chart with one nail. "The owner mentioned you're trustworthy. I wanted to verify that myself." "I'm trustworthy enough to tell you the observation lounge camera sees in the dark," I said, "and the server knows when a feed goes missing." "Good," she said, amused, and left a scent behind that reminded me of citrus that had learned politics. That evening we had the sort of sunset that makes investors believe in ethics. The principal guests did a practiced version of casual, linen, laughter, a fight about permits disguised as flirting. Leela sat with her feet tucked under her like a woman who had learned on land how to be comfortable anywhere and was testing the method at sea. Gabriel moved from person to person like he was checking shine on trophies. When he reached Lila, he kissed her hair, not her mouth, and called it intimacy. By 10, the salon had become a rumor. I posted James, my best deckhand, at the sliding door with instructions to be door, wall, and memory in that order. Mara passed him with a nod and her hand on his shoulder, leaving a smear of attention that would keep him awake longer than the watch required. The others filed in, strategist, founders, the principal with a glass he didn't look down into. Leela came last, barefoot, face turned toward the sea. She met my eyes with that practiced friendliness some guests use to keep the world from thinking they bite. "Late night?" I asked, neutral. "I like the ocean when it stops pretending to be a brochure," she said. "Then you'll love it at 300, I said. Her mouth tilted. "Is that an invitation?" "It's a forecast." At 23:40, the observation lounge door closed and James, bored, practiced being furniture. I made a quiet loop of the upper deck and checked the wing door. It creaked like a story with a conscience. I left it. Midnight brought the first wrong request. Dan pinged me. Client asking to toggle guest network to private tunnel. That was code for, let our traffic go somewhere other than where the flags on our stern think it should. I told Dan no and watched a thin sliver of anger cut through his politeness like wind across a glassy bay. He hated disappointing anything in a blazer. At 00:17, the engine room sent up an oddity, an intermittent power draw in the forward superstructure. Not HVAC, the chief engineer said. Something with hunger. I went hunting. In the pantry adjacent to the lounge, behind a tray of glass teapots and a bowl of apricots that had learned to pose, I found a small white node with a blinking light pretending to breathe. Not ours. It was tethered to a Coke's drop installed last refit for future needs. The future had arrived wearing a VPN. I killed it at the breaker and slipped the node into my pocket. On the other side of the bulkhead, a voice said, "We can move invoices through the Andalusian conduit if we keep the registry asleep." It was a man's voice, Gabriel's or the strategist. Another voice answered, woman calm, "Or we can tell the registry to wake up and put a camera on our good intentions." Mara. Then a third voice, amused and quiet in a way that made me dislike it. "Or we can ask Leela to smile at the environmental agency until they forget the inspection happened." Silence, then the clink of a glass that wasn't regret. I stepped back into the corridor just as the door opened. Mara came out first, eyes already strip-searching the hallway. She clocked me, clocked the pantry door behind me, and covered the distance between us with the persuasive gravity of someone who had gotten more than one crew member fired and still thought of herself as kind. "Tell me you weren't listening," she said softly. "I was counting glasses," I said, "and watts." Her gaze flicked to my pocket. I didn't pretend the node wasn't there. We were past pretending. "You'll give that back," she said. "I'll give it to the captain," I said, "and log the draw so our insurer stops smoking." "This isn't about insurance," she said, almost patient. "It's about moving money through water." "Water remembers," I said, "so do servers." She took a half step closer. "What does it take to keep you neutral?" "I am neutral," I said, "between the boat and the ocean." She studied my face like it was a weather map. "You're going to be inconvenient," she said, not angry yet. "Usually." She smiled like someone discovering a bruise. "Fine, then be useful. In an hour, open the starboard stern door and pretend you're testing the platform. The others will think it's a swim. It is." "What is it?" "An exit," she said. "For who?" "For whoever decides to tell the right lie tomorrow." She put a hand on my chest, just flat enough to feel like a press, not a touch. "Still there." "Still," I said, and hated how honest it sounded. At 01:20, Leela came out alone. Her hair had learned salt. She leaned on the rail as if she wanted to interrogate horizon lines. "Does this ship keep secrets?" she asked. "Ships keep logs," I said. "People keep secrets." "How do you know which is which?" "Logs get read." Her eyes moved along the water the way you read a sentence twice because you want the ending to change. "We were so good at being almost honest," she said. "Then the good became a hobby." "You don't have to tell me this," I said. "I read your face," she said. "You already know the outline." We stood there, respectful inches apart, crew and guest collapsing into two people shaped by what they were trying not to do. She slipped 2 fingers under the strap of my radio as if checking it for weather. "Still there?" she asked. "Still," I said. "Good," she said, "because I need a witness." At 02:10, I opened the starboard stern door under the excuse of platform testing. The sea breathed like a patient animal. The underwater lights turned black water into coin. Mara appeared with Gabriel, who wore the expression of a man about to applaud himself. The strategist arrived after, carrying a bottle like the secular part of ritual. Leela came last, barefoot again, the soles of her feet inked with the map of Artique. Mara put a hand on Gabriel's arm. "It will be quick," she said, "and clean." "Everything worth doing is neither," Leela said, and the line slid under my skin like a hook. Before I could decide what I was watching, there was movement at the swim platform, the kind of sudden hurry water does when a plan breaks surface. A black RHIB bled out of shadow, low, quiet, ridden by 2 men who didn't waste words. They bumped the platform hand-soft. Mara stepped forward like a woman who had arranged her own future. The strategist followed, grinning at no one. Gabriel hesitated just long enough to practice regret, then kissed Leela's forehead, again the hair, not the mouth, and shifted his weight toward the ride. "Not you," Leela said. He blinked, "Sorry." "This is the part where you don't get to be clever," she said. "You sent our money through a charity that had my name on it without asking how I felt about laundering. You told me a story about ends and means while you used my face as a smuggler's pouch. Today you get to watch me move something without you." "What are you moving?" he asked, voice dug out of embarrassment. "Proof," she said, "and then myself." The men in the RHIB watched with the patient interest of couriers who have learned morals cost extra. Mara said, "We need to go." "Take the strategist," Leela said. "Take your conduit and your promises. Leave me my weather." Mara looked at me as if I had become a lever she could pull. "Open the port door," she said. "We'll keep this neat." "I like symmetries," I said and didn't move. Mara's mouth tightened. "Fine." She turned to Leela. "You'll make this romantic in your head, it's just logistics." "Everything is logistics," Leela said, "including love." They dropped into the RHIB with just enough splash to be remembered. The coxswain eased them into the dark like a rumor. Gabriel stood with his hands on his hips, which is the body language for men who have never learned to cry without witnesses. "You know this is stupid," he said to Leila. "I know it's late," she said. He went back inside with the posture of someone inventing a better version of the argument for later. Leila stayed at the rail. I shut the stern door. The sea returned to pretending it wasn't a messenger. "Are you going to log that?" she asked. "I'm going to log the door test," I said, "and the battery draw, and that the sky was clear." "That's not the same as not logging it," she said. "It's the same as letting tomorrow exist," I said. She exhaled, a sound like something more than gratitude and less than permission. "You're good at this," she said. "I like keeping boats whole." "Do you keep people?" "No," I said, "but sometimes I try not to break them further." At 06:00, we were at anchor off a cove where government boats don't like to bother conventionally rich people. A drone with expensive posture appeared over our bow and considered us. I considered it back with a signal jammer we keep for overly curious toys and drifted us just enough so its operator had to pretend their battery was the problem, not my interference. The crew did crew things. The guests did guest things, which are often the same as crew things except you don't have to pretend you like them. At 09:20, a black car met the RHIB at a rock beach and left a dust trail toward a town with one road and 3 stories about how it got there. At 10:00, Mara texted a number I didn't have. We delivered the wrong thing to the right person. Tell your logs to be kind. I deleted it because I am not a cupboard. By afternoon, I decided on my report. A faulty Coke's diplexer, a stubborn wing door, a guest request denied for reasons of safety. The captain read it and looked at me like men do when they can't decide if they're grateful or worried I'm smarter than is healthy. "You like the line," he said. "I like not getting arrested," I said. At sunset, Leela found me on the bow. She stood close enough for the breeze to choose which of us to forgive. "They'll call you," she said. "They'll offer you something you think you want." "Who is they?" I asked. "Everyone," she said. "Gabriel, Mara, the ocean. You'll say no because you've already decided what kind of man you are. That's the good news. The bad news is the deciding never ends." She touched the front of my shirt with 2 fingers, a pressure that felt both like a test and an inheritance. "Still there." "Still," I said. We didn't cross the line. We walked next to it until our shadows shook hands and called it a treaty. Later, when the night watch hummed and the ACC wind sang in the vents, I sat alone in the observation lounge where the camera sees in the dark and smelled the ghost of citrus politics on the upholstery. I imagined Mara somewhere. I imagined a car with dust on it, and a woman whose name wasn't on the manifest handing over a drive that contained a version of the truth that would take 6 months to turn into a headline and 2 hours to turn into a counter-narrative. 2 days later, Coast Guard boarded for a routine safety inspection performed with the seriousness of theater. Their lieutenant used words like integrity of records and transponder transparency. We showed them our clean. They left, politely thwarted, munching our macarons as if sugar could help them forget. When the charter ended, Gabriel tipped like guilt. Mara shook my hand and left a card without numbers, just a name embossed deep enough to cut. "If you ever get tired of logging," she said. "I won't," I said. "You will," she said cheerfully. "Call me when you don't want to be righteous, only precise." Leela came last, linen and sun and something unhurried. She didn't say thank you, she didn't say sorry. She put 2 fingers on my sternum again, a private liturgy now. "Still there." "Still," I said. She nodded, tucked a small sealed envelope into Dan's tip wad for the crew, and walked away without looking back. I did not open the envelope. I did not learn until a week later that it funded 2 months of shore leave for a deckhand whose father needed surgery. People can be generous without witnesses. It's rarer than storms. Now, when the midnight slow zone kicks in and the sea keeps its own counsel, I stand at the stern and watch the wake write a brief history of our going. I think about the node in my desk drawer and the way it blinked like a small heartbeat. I think about mouths that find foreheads instead of lips, and the way a swim platform becomes a courtroom when night is brave. I think about logs and secrets, and those 2 fingers at my chest asking a question that never stops being current. "Are you still there?" "Yes, still."